would like you to please help me welcome the turkey. He's the man. The turkey, he's the man, Miss Jamie Davis.
Good evening, Toastmasters and distinguished guests. I remember when I was a little girl on Thanksgiving Day. All the women in our family would be busy preparing the meal, and all of the kids would be outside playing. After a while, someone would send for us and ask us to come in, and they would push us over to the kiddie table. But before you got to the kiddie table, what you always remember was walking through the door and the smell or the aroma of all of the recipes that were cooking inside the house. They would hit you at the door. And when you think about it today, you can almost smell it right now. There was the macaroni, the mashed potatoes, the yams, the green bean casserole, Cornish hens, ham, and the guest of honor, the turkey. Now, as a kid, I always wondered, why is the turkey the guest of honor? Why does he get to sit in the center of the table? Why do we have turkey every Thanksgiving? Again, this was what I pondered as a child, but as an adult, that thought still never left my mind. I was still trying to figure out, why is the turkey the center of attention? After some research and a little bit of exaggeration on my part, I've come up with how the turkey became the man. Now, some of you have heard the story of how the Pilgrims and the Indians met, and so I'm going to give you a little backdrop on that. So, more than likely, you haven't heard the story being told in quite this manner. But as we know, around the 1600s, the Pilgrims and the Indians came together to celebrate the first Thanksgiving. There was conversation, there was compromise, and there was hospitality among the humans, that is. Among the meats, there was a rivalry going on. You see, at that time, the duck, the fowl, and the deer were all revered in their respected areas as the man. But then the turkey, that old bitter, jealous, and envious turkey, lurked around, trying to figure a way to take them down. So he comes up with a plan. He decides, I would get all of them to meet and take each other out. So one day he decides to visit all three in their respective areas. First he goes to the lake to find Mr. Duck. He says, good morning, Mr. Duck. Mr. Duck says, good morning, Mr. Turkey. He says, it is a shame that Mrs. Fowl is going to be the guest of honor at the humans' great feast on tomorrow. Mr. Duck said, you must be kidding. Because all these years he's been revered as being the man. You see, queens would ask for him at every special occasion. He was so succulent and juicy that everyone wanted Mr. Duck. He said, Mr. Turkey, you must be kidding. I will be the guest of honor. I will be the man. Mr. Turkey said, okay, but if I were you, I'd meet Mrs. Fowl tomorrow at the great feast and see what she has to say. He said, I will. Mr. Turkey giggles off, and he goes to find Mrs. Fowl. Now he goes to the tree where Mrs. Fowl usually flies around, and he leans up against her tree and watches for a while because he knows she takes a daily flight every day. So as he's sitting there, all of a sudden he sees that she's coming near him, he starts to pretend to cry. So, being the compassionate bird that she was, Mrs. Fowl swoops down and says, "Mr. Turkey, what is wrong?" Mr. Turkey says, "You are such a beautiful creature, an extraordinary beast. Hunters celebrate when they get to eat you. I can't believe it. No, I can't tell you. It's too hard to admit." She says, "Oh, Mr. Turkey, what is wrong?" He says, "You will not be the guest of honor on tomorrow with the humans at the great feast." She says, "You must be kidding. I will be the guest of honor because I am the woman." Now, with his deceitful self, Mr. Turkey holds his head and he says, "If you say so, but if I were you, I'd meet at that great feast to prove that you are the woman." She says, "I will, and thank you for letting me know what's going on." Again, giggling, he walks off. Now he decides to find Mr. Deer. He goes deep in the woods to find Mr. Deer. When he gets there, he sees Mr. Deer among all of his friends, and he knows that Mr. Deer is a very prideful fellow. So what he does, he walks up and he says, "Mr. Deer, I heard a bird and a duck are going to be honored tomorrow at the feast, and you're not even invited." Mr. Deer said, "Excuse me? I will be there with barrels on, because everyone knows that I am the man." Mr. Turkey says, "I'll see you there." Now he returns to the barn because he's excited, because he figures he has them where he wants them. They'll take each other out and he will be the last man standing. He goes, sleeps for the night, wakes up bright and early the following morning. He walks out, and lo and behold, Mr. Duck is all dressed in his suit, Mrs. Flowers with her bright and perky flock feathers, and Mr. Deer with his coat all shiny and strong and smooth. They are heading towards each other to duel it out. And all of a sudden, Mr. Turkey says, "Ah ha ha! All these years, you all have ridiculed and put me down for my fat belly and my big thighs. And now it's my turn to get rid." You see, at that time, the pilgrims have come to cut the head of the turkey. So suddenly, Mr. Turkey begins to flap all around with his head hanging out. Mrs. Fowl flies off, the deer trots off, and the duck quacks off. They are completely afraid because they don't know what's going to happen next, and they say, "Mr. Turkey,